Reed Shusterman on the Fishbowl. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me.
For sure. I'm excited to chat.
Absolutely. I hope the temperature is just right. Awesome. Awesome. I had a chance to check out Bloodborne, and it was a really, really cool, interesting film that's definitely a homage to The Omen and Rosemary's Baby. But the first question that I kind of wanted to ask you is what got you interested in film?
That's a good question. Don't totally know the answer. I recently was going through some stuff that, has been in boxes since I moved out of my parents' house, and I found a little booklet screenplay, basically, that I wrote when I was 6 years old for a horror movie called Terror on the School Bus. So it's just kind of always been in me, I guess. I always liked storytelling. I always liked visual storytelling in particular. And just, I tried other things. I've tried writing prose and some stage things, but just filmmaking is just sort of the perfect mix of tools where you can really tell stories that are out of this world and really get people in a really visceral way.
Awesome, awesome. I definitely agree. I actually went to school here in Pittsburgh for screenwriting, and that's kind of where my podcast started. And I have like a few things published on Amazon, and
Hmm.
have won a few competitions and stuff, but still trying to get stuff out there.
Hmm.
But that's really cool. My second kind of question that kind of I guess follows up with that is who are some of your inspirations as a filmmaker?
In general, I'm a the Coen brothers, my favorite filmmakers of all time. The way they balance emotion and drama and comedy and violence and just really simple human action is just it's mind blowing, and I will always be trying to imitate them to some degree, I think. For this movie in particular, for Bloodborne, certainly Rosemary's Baby was a big influence on this one, and just sort of the slow burn and the psychological drama that is built into that film. Uh, and then also there were a couple other little movies. One, I'm blanking on the name right now. This little Irish horror movie that I wish I could think of the name, where it's just two people in a house and doing some magic that goes wrong, and the way that they built tension out with just two people in one space is really a big part of Bloodborne. I wish I knew the name. I'm gonna see if I
Awesome.
can find that.
In the meantime,
Yeah.
what's your favorite Coen Brothers film?
Oh, that's a hard question. That's a hard question. The answer is probably Fargo. I could think about it for a long time and come up with different answers, but Fargo is just sort of the classic blend of all of what they do best. It's just the perfect it's almost a perfect story structurally, just the way everything builds and means something thematically, and it's always moving, even though not really a lot happened except in about two or three scenes in that movie. But there's most of it's just interactions, people talking, slowly learning stuff, and it's just I will watch every second of that movie every day for the rest of my life if I could.
Awesome, awesome. I definitely like Fargo. I think my favorite though has to be The Big Lebowski.
Big Lebowski is a great one. I mean that's such a fun watch, and it's one of those things that just the first time you see it you don't really get it, and the second time you see it you start to get it, and it takes 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 times to really start understanding that movie, but you can feel it the first time you watch it, and I think that's why that's such a special movie, is there's just so much under the
I definitely agree. I'm also a really big fan of Raising Arizona.
yeah.
I think the chase sequence when Nicolas Cage tries to steal the
Yeah,
diapers is one of the best pieces of like cinematography,
absolutely.
in cinema history that kind of goes so underrated with like the type of
Yeah.
movie that it is. And I also really like their remake of the Lady Killers.
Really, that one I have a little more trouble with. It's great. It's good, and the acting's fantastic. But for me, I've found it a little. It didn't snap the way some of their other movies for me.
I'd say it was definitely probably more along like the commercial
Hmm.
line for them, but you almost don't know that that's like a Coen Brothers movie,
Yeah, very much.
because it definitely slipped under the radar and wasn't really like promoted like as a Coen Brothers movie.
That's true.
But when you kind of watch it, you definitely tell that it's them.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I actually had the chance to interview the actor Ty May, who
Hmm.
plays he's supposed to be the Vietnamese tunnel rat,
Right.
the
Yeah.
colonel in the film. I got to hear like some behind the scenes stuff on what it was actually like to work with the Coen Brothers, which was pretty cool. But I also really like No Country for Old Men.
That's a
Um,
fantastic one.
I
The
think
what? Sorry.
no, go ahead.
What one that I always like that I find to be fairly divisive among Coen Brothers fans, and I'm curious what you think. Inside Llewyn Davis, which for me was just a tour de force acting and a really sneaky, strong script.
I definitely agree with you there. It's not one of my favorites though.
Hmm.
There's definitely other ones that I guess the pace of it for me is a little more I guess enjoyable.
That's fair. That's I think that's what my wife told that she got very bored watching the movie. It's not snappy the way a lot of their other films are. Even their dramas tend to be snappy in a way that one is not.
Right. I mean the other comedy that like I really love from them is Burn After Reading.
Of course, that one is just that has a couple of scenes that just you never forget. And Brad Pitt in that movie is just fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, even up to his death, as
Yeah.
spoiler alert. But like his death is probably one of the funniest scenes in the movie.
It's one of the funniest scenes in anything the Coen brothers ever made, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, I definitely agree. I even am a big fan of like their earlier stuff, like Miller's Crossing, and Barton Fink.
Yeah, their earlier stuff. It's always fun to watch filmmakers like that, their early work, because you can see exactly what they're good at, and it comes through so strong. And then by the second or third or fourth movie, they start to get a little more professional crews and a little more experience in just making everything run smoothly, and they can reach higher highs. But the early movies have this sort of uncut purity that you don't see in all their stuff, and I always like seeing just sort of what did they bring to the table from the beginning.
Absolutely. Well, it's been great talking about the Coen Brothers, but let's definitely get back to
For sure.
Bloodborne. So I definitely enjoyed the film. You have a few people in the cast that must have been pretty cool to work with, like Rosie Moss and Anthony Perry,
Antoine. Yeah.
and Anton Perry. I really like Melanie Haynes
Hmm.
as Ola. She comes off from as the beginning as this kind of harmless, bigger, just full of love, woman. And once things kind of get going, and the ritual, actually goes into action with the couple, the gears kind of like switch on her, and she kind of turns a little more like demanding and forceful and not so nice anymore, and kind of like more of a force to be reckoned with. And right up until the very climactic ending, I was wondering. Obviously, there's definitely a lot of like Rosemary's Baby with her type of character and
Hmm.
the foundation, kind of like how in Rosemary's Baby, it was like the people, the tenants, living in the
Hmm.
building,
Right.
with the pact with Satan.
Hmm.
Um, but I also like that this company has been like doing it for long enough now that they have an app that tells you everything you need to know about them. And I wasn't sure though if the babies were supposed to be like vampires or just demons or monsters in general. I mean, I definitely they're definitely like the spawn of Satan, but I wanted to get your perspective on what the hell spawn actually was.
For me, it's a vampire.
Okay.
It's a different kind of vampire, but it's a vampire. That's sort of built into the background of the world building of the movie, that not every vampire is bitten and kept underground overnight, or however you turn in various stories. I think that was part of the fun for me, was finding ways to sort of play with the vampire tropes, but not hit all of them exactly. We didn't want to make Rosemary's Baby does Twilight.
Right, right. I definitely love how the doctor is like a douchebag.
Cole was a fantastic actor. He is not at all like that in real life, but he was just a fantastic presence on set for that role.
I love the hairdo that he had. The whole like bro attitude, like like he definitely was in a fraternity.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And all that. So like I thought that was kind of enjoyable about his presence in the film as well. I also like how it started with just like an incident that went terribly wrong, but I also wasn't 100% sure if that was what followed was supposed to be a flashback or if that was just like a new
No,
case.
it's just a new case. That was a different one, just so we get a sense of sort of the stakes of
Okay.
what can happen if it goes wrong.
Okay, that makes sense. I definitely like that the beginning opened with like the stakes that it opened.
Hmm.
It definitely was like something bad and ominous and menace is going on here, and I like that at least from what we've seen in the film, that the people that seem to be running the foundation are like all older women.
Well, somebody's got to keep everything.
Right.
And anything that's so heavily focused in childbirth is going to be traditionally female run. So that was part of why we went with that.
I wish I would have seen more of the boss woman.
Yeah, we wanted to do that, but we had some budget limitations and couldn't get that. The more we got into the foundation, the bigger the budget got. So unfortunately, we had to cut some stuff. But who knows? Maybe the sequel will see more.
Right, right. I definitely love to see it. So yeah, I definitely still like that we got a bunch of Ola. Um,
Yeah, Melanie was a great presence and just owned that role.
yeah, absolutely. She was just really was like one of the best attributes to kind of watch throughout the film. Kind of like guiding but yet demanding. Um, the couple with the instructions that they're supposed to follow. And I also really like the transformation of both Rosie Moss and Antoine Perry's characters, Michaela and Eric, because the beginning kind of starts off with them at an AA type meeting for not being able to conceive, and they're all the women are telling their story through like a montage, and then we find out Rosie Moss's character is the main one, and she's there with her boyfriend Antoine Perry's character Eric, and she's basically at the point where she's ready to give up. Antoine's character Eric is not ready yet, and there's the whole best friend part of the film
With Charisse,
yeah,
Lauren Price.
Charisse, and and I also like where Charisse's cousin Susan comes in as well. Then how they kind of both get knocked off towards the end, and yeah, the progression of their characters and the relationship in terms of how bad they want to have a kid, versus, I mean, I guess, they must have had the conversation of, like, adoptions out of the question.
Mm-hmm.
But they both, kind of start out skeptical. But Antoine is kind of like, more wanting to continue versus, Rosie's character. And once they get, the invitation from Susan to seek out the foundation, and they meet Ola and everything, and tells them about, the magic, and what they can do. And they do the ritual. Rosie continues to kind of be more skeptical, and Antoine kind of is like, this could work. But the moment things shift and they realize that, like, having a baby in a week, isn't normal. It kind of reminds me of that cool scene from Species 2, where like the astronaut guy is screwing the girl, and the other girl's in the bathroom, and like gives birth in like a matter of minutes. It kind of reminded me of that, but which was pretty cool. And that's when his character kind of shifts from, this isn't cool, something's wrong here, and Rosie kind of goes a little crazy, and up until she goes really crazy by the end, in terms of what she's willing to do to have her kid. So I was wondering, where was the writing and going in the initial story to kind of like get them to where they're at, and what was it, like working with Rosie and Antoine, through like the process of, getting their characters.
Well, it started out that it's a small movie. We shot 15 days and 13 of them were all in the same house. So almost the whole thing is in one location. So in order to make that not boring, especially with such a small cast, this isn't like 10 people trapped in a room getting picked off one by one. It's a small cast, it's a character drama. So there has to be a lot of movement in the character to make up for the fact that you're not really going that many different places. So as the script and story were sort of being developed, we started out with, the early versions of the story, and just sort of realized that it's not enough. It wasn't enough motion. It wasn't enough happening, that the changes weren't big enough. So that was probably the most important part of building the script, was finding how far can we take these characters from beginning to end. Like, how much can they be desperate and willing to do anything at the beginning of the script that leads them into this sort of magical horror thing that happens, and then by the end of the script, how can they still be desperate and taking big actions, but in a totally different way. And so that was kind of the puzzle we played with through the movie, and how to make those changes big and how to motivate them. And casting Rosie and Antoine made so much of that so easy. They hit it off immediately when we brought them in for callbacks. We had a number of actors for each of the two roles, and we were trying, different pairings. And when Rosie and Antoine came in together, it was just lightning that none of the other actors, who were all fantastic and making really great choices and interesting decisions, but they weren't alive the way Rosie and Antoine were when they were together. And then once they got the role and they were in prep for the movie, they really spent time with each other and developed a relationship that between themselves that they were able to bring out on screen, and they really feel like in our people who live together and are a couple, because they really spent the time to develop that. And yeah, I'm the director. Yeah, I helped a lot, but so much of that was them just putting in the work and developing their own backstory and really finding the textures underneath the words that were in the script. And I'm really fortunate that we had such great actors, because it just made my life so much easier.
Awesome, awesome. It definitely translates on screen.
Yeah.
It was the whole thing just was very enjoyable to watch. It had the suspense action going with the mystery,
Mm-hmm.
and some cool effects. I definitely like that. The climactic ending where basically, they're finally forced with, the decision, save the baby or, let it die, and, literally, they have to take a life, to save the kid in a pretty gruesome way, very much, I guess, with, satanic cults.
Yeah.
And
So some earlier versions script sort of leaned more into the satanic cult thing, but it seemed a little been there, done that. So we tried to pull away and make things a little different, a little more modern, lean into the vampire stuff a little bit, but not too hard. But that was definitely part of the DNA of the movie, but we tried to find our own spin on it.
right, it definitely works. I
Thank
definitely
you.
think it's a new fresh take. I like that the husband, Antoine's character, when he's forced with the decision of, do I kill Charisse and and cut out her heart to save this demon spawn, who I'm already kind of having like second thoughts, you know, about, about the situation. And he basically tells her, "You were fucking crazy, if you want me to kill your friend and cut out her heart to save this hell spawn." And then she just kind of like snaps, and it definitely does not end on a happy note. And I guess in some ways it does, some ways it doesn't. But I kind of saw one of them definitely get knocked off, and when Antoine's character was the first one to go, and then basically because Charisse was a witness, she was next.
Yep.
Um, you know, it was definitely a very a fun and gory horror film, climactic
Thank you.
ending.
Yeah. Yeah, that ending was a lot of fun to write and shoot, play around in blood for a day or two.
Awesome, awesome. Were there any different drafts of like the ending?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think from the beginning that was always how it was going to end. It would sort of be disrespectful to the audience if it didn't come down to the couple at the end of the movie and what's been. And so I think that was always how it was going to go. And it's a horror movie, so you want to leave people you don't want people walking out being like, "Oh, okay, I get that." You want people when they're done watching that to really have to sit there a minute and be like, "Oh shit," you know.
Definitely, definitely. Well, I have two closer questions for you.
All right.
And the first one is, what are some of your favorite films? And that's just in general.
All right.
And the last one is, if you have any other upcoming projects.
All right. I'll answer them in reverse order. I right now don't have anything I can promote. Bloodborne's been, big labor, and with the pandemic that sort of slowed everything down. But there are irons in the fire. Me and my producers on this one are already in talks about what's going to be next for us, and hopefully have another low budget thing to make. Hopefully next year. But it's always a process where you never know what's going to happen. So there are irons in the fire, but nothing I can talk about yet. Favorite movies is always. I'm glad it's not just favorite movie, because that's a much harder question. Uh, Big Fish is just such a great movie. It's emotional and deep, and it's beautifully shot, and the screenplay is fantastic. And as a storyteller, it's about the importance of storytelling on an emotional level. And it's sort of a little bit meta in a way that just made me want to make when I first saw it. In addition to that, 28 Days Later, uh, those are probably the two I would pick. 28 Days Later and Big Fish, which is a weird pairing, but I think those are my
Awesome, awesome. I may sound like a little film snobby here, but
favorite.
I honestly think Big Fish was probably Tim Burton's like last
Oh, yeah.
last like
Yes.
like original kind of film that just wasn't like something he threw Johnny Depp and his wife into. You know,
uh, I will say the one sort of exception, Big Eyes, which did not get a huge audience. The Big Eyes I really, though I found it it didn't have the life that his early movies had. I think you're right that he had this wonderful run of 10, 15 years where just everything he touched was imaginative and original. And then he made Big Fish, and then everybody was like, oh, let's give him a ton of money and Johnny Depp. And he just never got out of that rut. I mean, Alice in Wonderland made like $1.5 billion or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Something crazy. And look, more power to him. If I ever get the opportunity to sell out like that, and like I'll make a couple of more personal movies, but I've worked pretty hard. I'll take that sellout. I can't really blame him for that one.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. But I kind of admire what like Quentin Tarantino
Oh,
is
totally.
saying that he's planning to do. Like he's doing 10 movies and like that's it. You know,
I
like me personally, I think he's the type of guy that can't hold it in. You
That's
know.
what I think. That's what I think is he's gonna make 10. I don't know how he's gonna stop.
Yeah, I heard that he wants to direct like stage plays and write stage plays after this, which if you
Hmm.
think about it, like that's kind of what his movies are already.
That's true.
Minus like, the big effects. I also just kind of see him being the guy that with how much he loves movies,
Exactly.
I just don't see him like, being able to stop at 10. Like he might stop for like let's say maybe like 5 or like 10 years,
Right.
but
Yeah.
there's gonna be something brewing that's gonna be like 5 or 10 years after his last film. It's gonna be like Quentin Tarantino, the most blah blah blah, recognized filmmaker of our generation comes back with one more movie, you know.
Well, it's the same thing. How many times has ACDC or whatever done a farewell tour?
Right.
You might do other things. You might think it's enough, but if it's been a while, if that's what you've built your life around, and certainly Quentin Tarantino has built movies into his DNA in a way that I don't think anybody else in the history of the world has. I don't see how he's going to do it. I don't think it's possible.
I definitely agree. I also really did like 28 Days Later. Um, I,
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
a
I thought it did a better job of what the Snyder Dawn of the Dead kind of should have done.
Well, it came out a year before Dawn of the Dead, so I assume that Dawn of the Dead remake was in production before 28 Days Later came out. But 28 Days Later was the first one that came out that had those fast zombies, and so
But
it had
I try to be careful with that movie because I don't technically call those zombies.
well rage monsters, I guess they call them.
They did a very clever thing
Yes,
and they made it that it was like blood, transmitted
yeah,
virus, and I mean, it made you like just absolutely full of rage. But
yeah,
it did show at the end of the movie that they basically waited it out, and everybody that was infected eventually died of starvation
that's true. Yeah,
and dehydration. So didn't come back reanimated or anything. They were dead.
that's true. That's true.
So, but it did a very like clever take on it because they acted very much, kind of like fast zombies.
Yeah,
But yet they weren't zombies. They were just like infected, you know,
rage. I think they call them rage monsters.
yeah, rage monsters. Yeah. The second one, I thought they just did too much.
They did too much, and the best scene of that movie is the opening, which is the only part of the movie that Danny Boyle directed.
Right.
And he just has this way of moving the camera that is just electric and exciting. And they tried to ape it in the rest of the movie, and it just failed.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also really like, I believe his name was Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, yeah, he's fantastic. He's this really intense presence you can't look away from.
And that was like his first
Yeah,
major role that kind of introduced him to
yeah, I
American
think, yeah,
cinemas.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that.
He's been in a lot of stuff that I like.
Yeah, he's great. He's such a tightly wound presence on screen, and just you never know when he's going to like explode. And he's just he brings tension just sitting in a chair.
The movie that I really like that is one of his early films that everybody kind of forgets about, and it was a Wes Craven one too that everybody forgets is Wes Craven because it's not like a horror movie. Was Red Eye.
Yes, Red Eye is such a great trapped on a plane thriller, and he's just so creepy in it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think he's definitely at his best when he's a villain.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and in the villain kind of chair.
Yeah,
He kind of reminds me of like Gary Oldman a little bit, like back in the day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
I haven't seen Gary Oldman play like a good villain really since the Book of Eli.
Yeah,
Um, and he was kind of a villain in the Hitman's Bodyguard, but it wasn't it
full
wasn't
fledged. Yeah,
it was like I want to see you as a real villain, not
yeah,
like a goofy comedy. You
yeah.
know.
He's so. I mean, Oldman's so great at disappearing into roles, but if you give him leeway, he can just eat up the scenery in just such a fun, big way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Kevin Bacon is another one of my all time favorite actors to play a villain.
Yeah,
I think actually like any movie where he is the villain is just if you didn't even see the trailer for it, you're wait he's a villain. I'll check that out.
yeah, totally. He's a lot of fun to watch.
Well, Reed, it was a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to swim in the bowl with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, I would love to have you on again anytime.
All right, sounds good. I'll let you know when the next one's coming out.
All right, sounds great.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Bye.